Seahawks Today, post-draft winners and losers coming up in just a few moments. But before we do, we want to make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. Seahawks Today, bringing you daily Seahawks content. And the only way that you're going to see every moment of Seahawks Today is if you are subscribed. But go to youtube.com/SeahawksTV or hitting the red sub button below. Make sure those notifications are on so you never miss a moment of Seahawks Today for the best Seahawks coverage on YouTube from Chat Sports. Tyler Jones here with you. Appreciate you joining us on the channel as we are talking post-draft winners and losers today. What do the Seahawks look like now that the draft is completed? And here is the look at the draft picks from the Seahawks. As you can see in their first four picks, they started off the draft with Charles Cross, the offensive tackle from Mississippi State with the number 9 overall pick. Boy Mafe, the edge rusher from Minnesota, was picked at 40th overall, while Kenneth Walker III was selected by the Seahawks at 41. In the third round, the Seahawks found a right tackle in Abraham Lucas from the state of Washington, at Washington State with the 72nd pick. Then, with their day 3 selections, the Seahawks found Cody Barton, the cornerback from Cincinnati, the Thorpe Award winner at 109. Another corner in the 5th round with Tariq Wallen out of UTSA at 153. Tyreek Smith was picked at 158 in the 5th round, an edge rusher from Ohio State. And Bo Melton picked in the 7th round from Rutgers. And they also were able to pick up in the 7th round another wide receiver. That was Derek Young. So there you have it. Those are the Seahawks draft picks. So now when you look at this team going forward, the winners and losers of this draft, well, the big winner is obviously at the quarterback position, Drew Lock. Drew Lock, there was many questions with the last few weeks if they were going to bring in a guy like Baker Mayfield and such, and ultimately no Mayfield, no quarterback drafted. Drew Lock appears to be quarterback number 1. Pete Carroll this week said that if Drew Lock were in this draft, he would have been the first quarterback in this draft class. So they have high hopes on Drew Lock. They have said all the right things when it comes to Drew Lock, and it would appear that as of right now that Drew Lock has the Seahawks organization's full confidence at this point in time. So Drew Lock, a big winner in this draft. The fact that he doesn't have to compete with a rookie, and they haven't brought in a veteran quarterback to compete alongside him from another unit. Now, another winner, also at the quarterback position, is Geno Smith. Now, Geno Smith comes to Seattle where he finds himself as the most experienced quarterback in the Seahawks offensive system. Played in this scheme last year. Played pretty decent when he filled in for Russell Wilson when Wilson was hurt last year. And so although Drew Lock is projected to be the starting quarterback for the Seahawks, Geno Smith, as the most seasoned guy, has a real chance to compete and ultimately be the starting quarterback. The edge goes to Lock, but Geno Smith, you can't count out for this starting quarterback position when it's all said and done. And what we said about Drew Lock, similar things you could say about Geno Smith here. Geno Smith signed with the Seahawks knowing Drew Lock was there, and the fact that they did not trade for Baker or Jimmy G or draft a rookie quarterback, that he's competing basically with just one guy in Drew Lock, not really Jacob Eason. No one's really expecting much out of Eason there. This is a two-man race now. So who do you guys think is going to be the starting quarterback for the Seahawks when it's all said and done? Right now, these are the two guys. There's not another quarterback in this competition. It's down to these two, it would appear, between Drew Lock and Geno Smith. This is going to be our pinned comment today. So while the ad is playing that you're about to get, take advantage of it and tell us who you think the Seahawks starting quarterback should be, whether it's Drew Lock or Geno Smith. Another post-draft winner for the Seahawks was Dee Eskridge, the wide receiver. And Eskridge, this is a guy that was not that impressive last year. And you look at where this Seahawks team is headed this next season, and there's a real chance for D here to have a breakout season as the number 3 or number 4 receiver. There's really no excuses at this point for him not to step up. When Freddie Swain is the only guy that he's really competing with to be number wide receiver 3. I think there's a real opportunity for Dee to have that breakout season. Only 10 catches last year. He needs to step up and be that number 3 receiver for this Seahawks team. He's got a big chance to do so. Didn't draft any receivers in the early rounds. They spent some late draft capital on receivers, but there's a chance for Dee to really compete there. Another winner was Noah Fant at the tight end position. Noah Fant, right before the draft, was able to get his 5th-year option picked up by the Seahawks. And so the faith of the organization is clearly there in Noah Fant. They believe in him. Obviously, they traded for him in that Russell Wilson deal. And now you can see that this organization is putting their money where their mouth is. Here's a chance for him to compete. He gets to play alongside his former teammate, Drew Lock, who was with him in Denver there. A big opportunity for Drew Lock and Noah Fant together, as the Seahawks did not draft a tight end as well. Noah Fant going to be leading that offense in that tight end spot. Another winner for the Seahawks, Cody Barton. Now, you look at Barton's situation. This is somebody that is going to benefit from the fact that he's a starter, clearly. With Bobby Wagner leaving the Seahawks after he was released and Jordan Brooks sliding over to Wagner's role, there was a lot of ideas out there that the Seahawks would draft a linebacker or sign another linebacker to compete with Barton for one of the starting linebacker jobs after Wagner left. And I think most people thought that was going to happen. It really just didn't happen. So now Cody Barton is the big beneficiary in all this. Everyone's been high on Jordan Brooks for a long time. But now Cody Barton has a chance to step up and fill that void left by Bobby Wagner. Huge opportunity for Cody Barton there. So in a moment we'll get to our losers, but I want to hear from you guys. Who was the Seahawks' big post-draft winner from this year's draft? Now that the draft is over, who do you think was a big beneficiary? I want to hear from the comments section who you guys think was a big winner for the Seahawks. Let's move on to the losers. Now, this might catch your attention. This is not a clickbait headline. Let me make that clear. DK Metcalf, I have as a loser in all this, although he's number 1 in our hearts. DK Metcalf is a guy that is about the only receiver, it seems, in the National Football League that has not received his extension yet. Everyone else, of all these top receivers that are approaching their deadline, including A.J. Brown, who was on the same timetable as Metcalf, either got the extension and stayed where they were at, or they were shipped off elsewhere and got that extension from someone else. The Seahawks have not paid DK Metcalf yet. And with all this money, the record money that wide receivers are receiving right now, and DK Metcalf still hasn't gotten that check yet, that to me is why I have DK as a loser in all this. Everyone else is getting paid, and DK hasn't gotten his yet. Now, for the Seahawks end of things, because he's still a member of the Seahawks at this point, when the draft is passed, when they had a chance to get the draft capital and such, I feel pretty good about the chances of DK Metcalf staying in Seattle and getting that extension. I think it will happen, but if you're DK, you got to be a little bit frustrated that it hasn't happened by now and everyone else has gotten theirs at this point. Another loser is Chris Carson, the Seahawks running back. Carson coming off neck surgery where he only played 4 games last year, and they found his replacement in Kenneth Walker III now. Carson was expected before Walker was picked to compete for his old starting job with Rashad Penny. Now with Kenneth Walker there, it's very clear and obvious when you look at that depth chart. It's Walker and Penny as 1A and 1B, and Chris Carson's the number 3 back. Now, will Carson even make it out of training camp? Will the Seahawks even keep him around? That remains to be seen. But things have gone downhill for Chris Carson, a guy that you looked at just a couple of months ago was the number 1 running back. And I say a couple of months ago, I mean several months ago. Prior to this injury, this looked like his spot. And now the injury, and now what they've done to bring in Walker and Penny's emergence at the end of last year, Chris Carson is the odd man out in this equation here as far as the running back position goes. More Seahawks winners and losers in just a second here on Seahawks Today. But before we do, we want to make sure that you are subscribed to Seahawks Today, as we are covering this team like no one else on the interwebs is. Make sure you're subscribed, turn on the notifications, and you can see videos like what we had earlier this week, covering all the news and rumors going on with this team. No one else is covering this team like we are here on Seahawks Today. And that video that we did yesterday, we talked about KJ Wright potentially coming back to the Seahawks, and also gave you a full-on update on Chris Carson and such. All of that is covered on the channel each and every day here on Seahawks Today. Subscribe now, youtube.com/SeahawksTV. That's youtube.com/SeahawksTV. Another draft loser is Sideny Jones, the cornerback. And this is another situation where the Seahawks found somebody's replacement. In this case, Jones, he's going to be replaced by Cody Barton. The Seahawks found one of the biggest steals of the entire draft in Cody Barton, the Cincinnati cornerback and the Thorpe Award winner. And Sideny Jones has not been impressive as of late. I think that there's a very good chance that by the halfway point of this upcoming season, Cody Barton is going to take Sideny Jones' spot as the starting number 2 corner on this roster. Sideny Jones, it's going all downhill from here, let's be honest. Another loser on the roster for the Seahawks is Stone Forsythe, the left tackle. And in Forsythe's case, he thought he was going to start at left tackle for the Seahawks heading into 2022, but then they drafted Charles Cross, the left tackle out of Mississippi State, number 9 overall pick. And Cross has got the job from day one. This isn't a competition here. Charles Cross is that guy. So Stone, he'll have to come off the bench. He'll rotate in from time to time, but I can't imagine him getting that much playing time since Charles Cross was selected with that number 9 overall pick. I think the Seahawks found their starting left tackle for the next decade in Charles Cross. Stone, the odd man out there. One more loser for you, L.J. Collier, the edge rusher for the Seahawks. And they used a high draft pick on him a couple years ago. Ultimately, the Seahawks declined Collier's 5th-year option, and they drafted Boyd Mafe from Minnesota, who will be competing for those starting spots among the edge there. And in Collier's case, with the Seahawks declining his option and with hoping that he just makes the team at this point, with coming off that disappointing season last year, he's got a lot to prove at this point. And it's not a good time to be L.J. Collier right now, I can tell you that much. Who was your Seahawks' biggest post-draft loser? Tell us in the comments section who you guys think that was for the Seahawks here in the 2022 NFL Draft. So before we go, quick recap. Here are your post-draft winners and losers. The winners include the quarterbacks, Drew Lock and Geno Smith, wide receiver Dee Eskridge, tight end Noah Fant, and linebacker Cody Barton. Meanwhile, the losers, DK Metcalf, just because we're waiting on that extension, he hasn't gotten it yet. But DK, of course, a terrific player. Not a loser by definition, but in this case, we make an exception. Chris Carson at running back, Sideny Jones, cornerback, Stone Forsythe at left tackle, and L.J. Collier, the edge rusher there. So there you have it. Those are our post-draft winners and losers here on Seahawks Today.